Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council presents Epic Voyages. Come join us as we enter and experience the great mysteries of the world with tonight's host, Chase Kloetzke.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Epic Voyages Radio. I'm your guest host tonight. I am Chase Kloetzke, Development Executive and Vice President of Epic Productions. Epic is an acronym for the Extraordinary Phenomenon Investigations Council. We are an organization that has been framed and constructed with knowledgeable, skilled, and veteran professionals in each field to offer our investigators and the reporting public access to the expertise, network contacts, and researchers for a thorough and proper case conclusion. Our leadership council and investigators are some of the biggest, most trusted names in the field and are known for influence and study in ancient civilizations, fringe science, UFOs, cryptozoology, paranormal activity, secret societies, and conspiracy, just to name a few. To find out more about Epic Voyagers or submit an event report, please visit our website at www.epicvoyagers.com. Tonight, you guys, our guest is one of the most recognizable names and faces in our industry. He is joining us to discuss Erich Von Däniken's new book, Odyssey of the Gods. Philip is the editor of this latest work from Erich. In just a few short weeks, though, Philip's new book, The Ancient Alien Question, will be released, and it is available already on Amazon for pre-order. This is no joke, have to own a copy book. I just received a pre-book today, and it's friggin' awesome, you guys. It's amazing. And tonight we have Philip Coppens on, live and personal. Philip is an author and an investigative journalist, ranging from the world of politics to ancient history and mystery. He co-hosts the Spirit Revolution radio show with his partner Kathleen McGowan, and is a frequent contributor to NEXUS magazine and Atlantis Rising magazine. Since 1995, he has lectured extensively and has appeared in a number of television and DVD documentaries, including Ancient Aliens. That's the series on the History Channel. He is author of The Stone Puzzle of Rosslyn Chapel, The Canopus Revelation, Land of the Gods, The New Pyramid Age, and Servants of the Grail. And that's the ebook 2012, Science or Fiction. Mr. Coppens was born in Belgium and now resides in both the United States and the UK, and more information can be found at www.philipcoppens.com. I'm very excited to welcome Philip tonight. I have so many questions, and I just really want to bring him in right now. So let me introduce and welcome Philip to our show. How are you, Philip?
I'm excellent, Chase, and looking forward to the show.
Me too. I honestly, before the show got started, I was kind of joking with Philip a little, like, can you even get a cup of coffee anywhere in the world and kind of have some peace with that? I mean, can you do that at all, Philip?
Well, it's different. Obviously, the show Ancient Aliens is extremely popular in America. Over here in the UK, it's shown, but it's not as popular as it is in America. So, yes, I can definitely find peace in the UK. In America, it's beginning to become, it's lovely because every time people recognize you from the show, they say, man, I really like that show. But a few weeks ago, actually 2 months ago now, we were celebrating somebody's birthday, and we went to Las Vegas. And within the matter of 2 hours, I was recognized twice. Once by the assistant manager of a casino, and the other time by a cab driver. Each one of them basically also agreeing that it was a fab show. And that's the lovely bit. Every time somebody comes to you and recognizes you, they say that this is really a show which they like. And the cab driver in Las Vegas basically said that 20 years ago he'd left Iraq to come to the US, and he was basically saying, man, you have no idea how we grow up with this kind of information, and it's really good to finally see a show which is bringing all of this information to the big screen. So it's definitely a whirlwind ride, and the likes of Giorgio Tsoukalos, who is another principal person being interviewed on Ancient Aliens, we always joke that his hair has his own page and has 9,000, I think, Facebook fans. So when your hair has 9,000 Facebook fans, it's a popular series.
Oh, well, for real. And do I even dare to admit that I am one of those people that is a fan of his hair page on Facebook? Because it's the truth. Come on, it's just funny, guys. But and yeah, just to let our listeners know that Philip is the good-looking one with the good hair. Sorry, Giorgio, but that's kind of it is a hugely popular show, but it's popular for a lot of really good reasons, Philip. And the experts and the things that they describe and the places that they show and the history and the message of it just resonates with a lot of Americans, myself included. My husband and I are huge fans. We're recording it as we speak, actually. And, so there's a reason for its popularity, separate of Giorgio's hair. But but the latest book by Erich Von Däniken is also going to be huge. It's mega blockbuster, and you're the editor of this book. I guess probably the first thing was the book says we're in for a shock of major proportions. Oh my gosh, Philip, can you tell us about that a bit?
Well, basically what Erich is trying to do with this book is, Erich has written roughly 30 books in roughly 40 years. And what he's trying to do with this book is basically say you grew up with this knowledge that the Greeks, you read about the Greeks, you read about their myths, you read about their gods. This is something which you were fed in. If you've studied classics, you probably even read it in Greek. So there you are. You think you know all of these things. Well, maybe not. And the book really is guiding you through the maybe nots, things which you think you knew about ancient Greece, but which in closer study and more detail really aren't at all so apparent. And basically, what he is arguing is this. When we look at the mythology, we are seeing stories. We are seeing men who excel at great things and do fantastic things. And our teachers tell us that this is great. The Greeks were so prolific in these writings, and look how brilliant these men were. Really, the Greeks are this cradle of civilization. But actually, it's something which isn't really true, because what is happening is that these Greek great stories about 150 years ago to 200 years ago, people said well, we don't really get these stories. What are these things about? And so all of these inconsistencies or these things which really weren't that clear to the people who even were experts in their field, they decided that they had to retranslate them and apply their own knowledge to these translations so that it would become more clear and more apparent as to what was going on in these things. And that is unfortunate, because when you start reading them in the original, with the original wording in place, a vastly different picture emerges. And for example, the example which Eric uses in early on is the story of Jason and the Argonauts. Here you have a dude who basically feels that he has to do something, go to a foreign land, and basically steal something called as the Golden Fleece from another king from a faraway country, and then bring it back to his home territory. And, Eric kind of goes like, okay, so the Golden Fleece, what is this? And when you look at what they have made into this, what the modern translations have made into this, Eric jokes it's a bit of fur. Basically, it's an object of not really any importance whatsoever. And the question which everybody who's reading Jason and the Argonauts should really be asking is like, why do you even bother going? It's not that interesting. It's not that important. But again, we are working with very liberal, adapted translations. And when you go back to the original account, you actually are confronted with a completely different story. There you find that the Golden Fleece is an object which can fly. And one of the dudes which basically go with Jason is almost kind of like inviting himself to the party and says like, look, if you take me with you, I am probably one of those guys who's able to pilot or navigate this ship for you. And other people on his ship are basically saying, well, where this object is located, what, again, modern translations have made into dragons or other mythical creatures. What really the original accounts are saying is that this is pretty much, when you read it, a defense mechanism. There's a regularity to it, there's a danger to this, and there's also information as to how to disable it, which, clearly, if this is a mythical creature like a dragon, there is no button or no mechanism which you can press which would somehow disable the dragon. Yet, in the original accounts of Jason and the Argonauts, the way the Greeks were reporting it, all of these little details are present. And so the overall question which Eric asks is, this picture which is emerging about these myths, don't they sound far different from what we all think or what we all grew up with, which is, something which we think the Greeks imagined, that the Greeks were somehow simple creatures who weren't aware of thunder and lightning and had an active imagination, but really what they seem to have been doing is relate people from the future or people from their own times. These are extraordinary accounts, and we cannot let them go by, and these are the extraordinary accounts which they were recording. It's us in the last 150 years who have basically done away with what the Greeks were truly writing and have made it into a science fiction story.
Absolutely. Do you feel like that's kind of the most important point of the book?
I think, the most important point of the book is that it really begins to reanalyze Greek mythology, Greek history, and basically tells you that you might have thought that you knew certain things, but think again. Greek mythology is far more complex, and basically that what is at the foundation of all of these myths are events, people, not necessarily human people, but creatures who for the Greeks were real, and that everything about that is a legacy from the Greeks to their own civilization, but also to us, relating extraordinary events, extraordinary people, extraordinary artifacts to that, to the next generations. And really, again, we have been not paying attention, and our academics have been doing us a disservice by thinking that they should edit these texts and change them from the original format, because they have made them into fantasies.
Right. Erich Von Däniken has really been asking whether ancient myths and legends speak of extraterrestrial beings which have been mistaken for gods for more than 45 years. What's new in the new book, Odyssey of the Gods, that he continues to pose this question?
Well, the focus of the book is Greece, and it's not something which he really has focused on. Erich is probably most famous for the Nazca lines and the Palenque stone slab, and various, the big stones, questions about the Great Pyramid, Baalbek, all of these exotic locations where, in the early 1970s, he himself took television crews to and showed them how extraordinary these monuments were made, and then said, do you seriously think that our ancestors were able to do this with just basic tools? And even if they were able to do that, why were they making such complex structures than the way they built? So that's kind of like the traditional Erich. Erich, the way most of the people know him. In this book, he delves into the myths and specifically of a civilization, Greece. And Erich, when you not all of his books get translated into English anymore, but when you look at Erich's writing records in German, you will find that he mixes the two. What he's famous for, and then he will pick up a civilization, for example, Egypt, in this book, Greece, and he will focus it more specifically on that civilization and basically analyze that civilization rather than just bits and pieces from across the world.
Right. In his book, Odyssey of the Gods, he focuses on Greece as the likely place of ET contact. Why Greece out of all of these amazing places?
Well, he's focusing as such on Greece in the sense that he's saying the Greek stories also have evidence of contact with non-human intelligences. So he's not saying that it's Greece and nowhere else. He's basically saying Greece too, and I think that's the message. It's the message that we might have assumed that the Greeks had no contact with extraordinary non-human intelligences, but he's basically saying yes, they did. They too.
Yes. What bits of Greek mythology are especially susceptible for an ancient alien interpretation?
Various bits. Obviously, the Jason and the Argonaut story, which I was relating earlier,
right.
is clearly one which shows that there are bits and bobs of ancient technology around. He does a very interesting chapter on Zeus, and again, basically, what you're looking at with Zeus is a creature who we all assume is somehow the ancient Greeks not understanding what thunder and lightning was.
Right.
But when you start looking at Zeus, specifically what the Greeks are saying is that the thunderbolts of Zeus were very specific. What they do is something, they're like, Zeus isn't saying, I will kill you, and then something happens. No, he's very specific. He will be able to direct his lightning and thunderbolt. And it's really us who have the problem in not understanding it and thinking that when whatever he has, this tool which he has and which he's able to control and which he's able to kill with, when it is described as a thunderbolt or a flash of lightning, that, again, we, and specifically the academics, begin to think that this is something to do with, the natural phenomena. But just imagine, the atomic explosions which we all have witnessed in the decades of the 1940s and the 1950s specifically. We all have seen that footage, and we all describe it as a giant mushroom cloud. Well, imagine 100, 200, 10,000 years, people coming up with explanations and say like, they describe these giant mushroom clouds.
Exactly.
We are using the example of a mushroom, even though we are absolutely aware that no mushrooms were involved in the creation of the atomic bomb. And the same thing is with the ancient Greeks. They're using imagery. They're using visual tools to explain something which was happening. And you know, it's that kind of approach which really suggests that when it comes to Zeus, what's happening there is far more than just the Greeks having no idea whatsoever about thunder and lightning. When you start to accumulate all the various pieces of Zeus, you're coming away with a very nice picture of a creature who clearly loved women, earthly women, if not a bit too much, and was also somebody who had extraordinary weapons capabilities at his disposal, which he, you know, was prone to show off and if he needed to use.
Absolutely. Now, I've read Erich Von Däniken's book, Chariot of the Gods, when I was 16 years old, and it literally, like, you know, you guys probably hear a lot, it changed everything for me. I had a really hard time accepting anything but an ancient alien theory. But I think as you know, I kind of look back on all these years, and I'm not going to admit how many of those were, but several decades, and I really wonder why Erich is still one of the very few, if not the only one, to ask the question about the reality of the Greek myths.
Well, you know, that there have been others. I think what Erich does and what puts him apart is that as much as the skeptics or people will say, oh, he has these theories about ancient aliens, he doesn't really. You know, when you look at other people like Zechariah Sitchin or Robert Temple or David Icke or so many others, they have theories about extraterrestrial beings. Zechariah Sitchin will say, I believe that the aliens from the ancient Sumerian civilization came from a planet called Nibiru, which circulates in an oval pattern in our solar system, and it has an orbit of 3,600 years, and continues to add further detail to his theory. Erich doesn't do that kind of thing. Erich basically looks at what we have around us from ancient civilizations, whether that is physical, mythological, anthropological, or whatever kind of description you want to give it, and basically analyzes that and questions. You know, Chariots of the Gods had more than 237 question marks in it, and he was questioning. It was a challenge to science and saying, kind of like, are you sure that history is the way you're saying it? Because I've got a few questions for you. And really what he has been doing for 40 years is questioning. You know, he's to some extent he accuses science of being sloppy, but you know, he's not how should I put it? He doesn't put it as harsh as that in his books. Instead, he prefers to focus on the analysis of what the work he's doing and the myths he's coming across. But basically, you know, what he does is challenge science. He's forcing them to come up with answers. And, you know, of the so many questions which he posed in 1968, some of them, you know, the Nazca lines, I think, is always a good one, and I actually tackle that in my own book, which basically is this: the Nazca lines. When Erich wrote, you know, Chariots of the Gods in 1968, he said, like, this looks like a landing strip. This looks like an airport. So, you know, could this be a spaceport for extraterrestrial beings? Because really what we are seeing here is something which can only be seen from the sky.
Right.
And at that moment in time, not a single archaeologist was really interested. You had a lone German woman called Maria Reicke who had set up camp and tried to manage on her own the Nazca lines and preserve them and speak against them, because they were basically used as a secret bypass between two freeways, and the trucks were basically destroying an awful lot of the geoglyphs. And so you know, in 1968, Erich focused the world's attention on Nazca, and straight away, you know, scientists were saying, well, he can't be right. He's wrong. And sure enough, you know, Erich pretty much knew, because he'd actually been there, that the terrain was extremely rough, and that if ever a craft were to land on there, it would, it wouldn't have a nice landing, so to speak. But what he was saying, the key thing which he was saying was, I believe that these things had to be seen from above, because only from an airplane, only from somewhere in the sky, are you really able to appreciate what these people have done. So why would they have created this if not for it to be seen from the sky? And so for several decades, people were looking into the Nazca lines, basically, began to map it, found that there were nearby pyramids, found that that there was a complete civilization, which they hadn't mapped. And the only reason why they were doing it at that moment in time was because Erich was pushing them to come up with the answers. Now,
right.
40 to 45 years later, we're at a situation whereby there are some archaeologists who are actually saying that they are quite convinced that the people who built the Nazca lines actually had hot air balloons, and that these hot air balloons were used to take man into the sky, and that from these hot air balloons, when they were flying, they could look down on the geoglyphs. Now, Erich said that the Nazca lines were to be seen from the sky, and 45 years later, there are finally some people who are beginning to entertain this notion within scientific circles. So it shows you that, by asking the question and for science to respond, it takes an awful long time. And so
yeah.
For all the other things where he really wants to, where the evidence is far stronger that there is an ET component than the Nazca lines, I'm afraid that Erich, who's 78, might need to live to be 120 or 150 before really, science is even going to begin to address the big question, which is the ancient alien question, whether we were alone or not in the past.
Right. It's amazing that he is stuck, so reverently to this quest, and I know all of us really appreciate that. I love truth seekers, and I love that people that know there's something to it do not even let the so-called professionals sway them of what they notice to be true. And he does excuse me